Hello everyone, welcome to my channel again. So today we will learn about hypothesis, what are hypotheses, and we will also understand some of the hypothesis test and how we conduct a particular hypothesis as well. Let's start today's video. So the word hypothesis means assumption. When you make any assumption, it is called as hypothesis. So in hypothesis testing, we begin by making a tentative assumption about population parameter. So here in this, as per our chapter, as per our course, we will deal with population, then its sample, and we will treat this sample with hypothesis. Okay, so why we are making assumptions or why we are building hypothesis? Because in businesses, most of the events happen on the basis of the data which we collect. We can identify what that event is, how that event is, and how it will turn out. So let's say basically a particular tire manufacturer company is manufacturing a tire and they have tested the trial run of those tires that it has a range of more than 40,000 kilometers, and after that it will tear off, means it will become obsolete. But now the other guy is claiming that no, it cannot goes up to 40,000 kilometers, it will tear off below 40,000 kilometers. So this is the assumption which the other guy is making. That assumption is what we test with the help of hypothesis. Okay, so I'll give you many examples in the coming slides. For now on, let's understand the actual terminologies. So this tentative assumption is called the null hypothesis and is denoted by HO. Okay, so in order to understand, see, we have two kinds of hypothesis, which are null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. This is our null hypothesis. This is this we denote by H naught. Okay, and we have other hypothesis which is alternative hypothesis, and it is denoted by HA. So H naught for null hypothesis, HA for alternative hypothesis. So what are these two? Okay, for example, a particular scenario is given and that scenario will be termed as HO, which is null hypothesis, and the opposite of a particular scenario is called alternative hypothesis. Okay, so yeah, for now on only remember these two terminologies, null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. So how do we develop this null and alternative hypothesis? How we formulate it? So let us understand this. It is not always obvious how the null and alternative hypothesis should be formulated. You have to remember it is not always obvious. Okay. So care must be taken to structure hypothesis appropriately so that the hypothesis testing conclusion provides the information the researcher or decision maker wants. Basically, hypothesis also allows us to make some sort of decision. So in order to decide, in bigger organizations or businesses, decision making is a crucial and a very important factor. So when it comes to making decisions, you have to design, a proper care must be taken in order to designing the hypothesis. Okay, so the context of the situation is very important. The context means the scenario which I said is very important in determining how the hypothesis should be stated. All hypothesis testing applications involve collecting a sample. and using the sample results to provide evidence for drawing a conclusion. Right? Good question to consider when formulating the null and alternative hypothesis are: what is the purpose of collecting the sample? We have to always ask this question to ourselves: what is the purpose behind it? Why we collected the sample? And what conclusions are we hoping to make? Okay. In some situations, it is easier to identify HA, which is alternative hypothesis, first, then develop the null hypothesis. In other situation, it is easier to identify the HO, which is null hypothesis, first, and then develop the alternative hypothesis. So yeah, here is the situation which is given to us. Consider a particular model of car that currently attains an average fuel consumption of 7 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers of driving. A product research group develops new fuel injection system specifically designed to decrease the fuel consumption. Okay, so they in this particular scenario we have a particular model of car that gives an average of 100 kilometers per 7 liters. Okay, in 7 liters it is giving an average of 100 kilometers of drive. So average fuel consumption is 7 liters. This is going to be our mu. Okay, mu is our 7 liters, right? But the product research group develops a new fuel injection system in which it is saying that it will decrease the fuel consumption. Okay, so see, below I have mentioned the hypothesis. I have created the hypothesis. So as previously in the slide it was stated that it is easier sometimes to identify the alternative hypothesis first, then the null hypothesis is identified after the identification of alternative hypothesis. So here in this case, what we have given a particular information is there. A product research groups develop a new fuel injection system. So product research group will come under the alternative hypothesis scenario where they have developed a new thing and they are claiming, or not claiming, but making an assumption that this new fuel injection system will help in decrease the average, or specifically designed to decrease the fuel consumption. So see, our alternative hypothesis is now formed. Okay, so either you get null hypothesis formed first or you get alternative first. In this scenario we got the alternative hypothesis formed first. Now in this case the opposite of this alternative hypothesis is going to be mu, which is greater than equal to 7, opposite case of this. Okay, now always remember that when it comes to designing the alternative hypothesis, you should never apply the equals to symbol below your operations. Okay, below your operator functions you can only give equals to greater than, less than. Okay, but you cannot apply this equal to dash below the symbols when it comes to designing the alternative hypothesis. All right, so here the product research group is looking for evidence to conclude. They are looking for evidence to conclude that new system decreases the mean fuel consumption. We have got more information for developing our hypothesis. So yeah, the information is given over here. In this case, the research hypothesis is that the new fuel injection system will provide a mean liters per 100 kilometer rating below 7. See, the product research group's hypothesis is given over here. Okay. So as a general guideline, a research hypothesis should be stated as alternative hypothesis. Whenever some particular group is trying to make a research and they want to conclude something, it comes under the alternative hypothesis. Okay, you must always remember this. Hence the appropriate null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis for the study are given below. I hope you got this. So yeah, let's understand this with the help of visualization. As you have seen most of my videos, I give lot of importance to the visualization. And when I say visualization, it means that I always create a normal distribution diagram or a normal distribution curve. Okay, so yeah, it is really important for us to understand this hypothesis, how it will be and how it will look like under the normal distribution diagram. Okay, let's first read the case what it says. The researchers have the statistical support to state that the new fuel injection system decreases the mean liters of fuel consumed per 100 kilometers. The production of cars with new fuel injection system should be considered. However, if the sample results lead to conclusion that H0 cannot be rejected, the researchers cannot conclude that the new fuel injection system is better than the current system. Okay, so in this case, what it is saying that the researchers is claiming that the new fuel injection system will be lesser than 7. Okay, but if they fails to prove this, so they it will lead to the conclusion that our H naught, which is null hypothesis, it cannot be rejected. That means we have failed to prove, or the researcher group has failed to prove that the average fuel consumption is lesser than 7 liters. Hence, it means that the H naught cannot be rejected. We are accepting this. Okay. Now, let us understand how this will look in the diagram. Okay, how this will look in the normal distribution diagram. So this is our normal distribution curve, right? So whenever we are building hypothesis, we are testing the alternative. We are testing the alternative assumption, right? We're always testing our hypothesis, and we are always trying to prove that this is going to be right or not. That is why we are building our hypothesis. So in this, the alternative hypothesis in which where mu is less than 7, so this less than, the point is on the left side. Okay, left side direction. So our hypothesis in the normal distribution diagram or normal distribution curve will look like this. Okay, this is called as lower tailed hypothesis. Okay, why? Because the tail is pointing on the left side direction. That is why we have only shaded the left side portion of our normal distribution curve, and because of which it is termed as lower tailed hypothesis. Moving on. So in this case, we have been given 3 different hypotheses, and this will remain the same for every different scenarios. The structure, the symbols will remain the same. We have basically 3 types of hypotheses. So what it shows, so let me explain it to you. We have null hypothesis, which is mu greater than equals to mu naught. Mu naught is our population mean. Okay, and we always do comparison with our population mean. We are finding that whether this is going to be greater than equals to mu population mean, or whether it is going to be less than equals to population mean. Okay, that is why we are building our hypothesis. Now let's understand how this will look in our normal distribution curve. So here the symbol is pointing towards the left direction, so this will look like this. Okay, this is our first case. Now let's understand the second case. Here it is pointing towards the right direction, so it will look like this. Okay, the portion shaded on the right side. Now in this case where we have equals to and not equals to, okay, yeah, in this case we have equals to and not equals to. So how it will look like? It will look like this. two shaded portion on both the sides. So this is our first, second and third. Three types of hypothesis we have, and three of them are called as the first one, which shows the shaded portion on the left side, is called as lower tailed. Second one is called as upper tailed, and third one is called as two tailed hypothesis. Okay, so yeah, this is how it will look like. Let us understand this problem which is given to us. So the manager of Costa Resort Hotel stated that mean weekend guest bill is 600 or less. A member of the hotel's accounting staff noticed that the total charges for guest bills have been increasing in the recent months. Okay. The accountant will use a sample of weekend guest bill to test the manager's claim. Right? Here, a particular situation is given to us wherein the manager of a particular hotel is stating that the mean means mu weekend guest bill is 600 or less, meaning that the mu is lesser than equals to 600. Okay, is equals to 600 or less. This we have converted into symbols, right? Whatever he has stated. Then a member of hotel's accounting staff noticed that the total charges for guests bill have been increasing in recent months. So now this staff is noticing that our mu, which is weekend guest bill, is increasing in the recent months. Okay, so these are the two things. This is a claim. Claims always comes in null hypothesis, and somebody making an assumption comes under alternative hypothesis, right? So question A is saying that which form of the hypothesis should be used to test the manager's claim. Explain. So we have three different types of hypothesis, right? Which one will be particular? This one. Okay, because we already made this over here, right? Why? Because the manager is claiming that our mu is less than equals to 600. Okay, mean weekend guest bill is lesser than equals to 600. This is their claim. But the member of accounting staff, hotel's accounting staff, has noticed that the total charges for guest bill have been increasing in recent months. So it is their notice assumption. Assumption comes under alternative hypothesis and claims come under null hypothesis. Okay. So we got the answer for our first question A. Okay, we solved the A. So I will write it down as claims always comes under HO, which is null hypothesis. Okay, this is the explanation which you can write. And notices or assumptions comes under the alternative hypothesis. Okay, so yeah, we have solved the A, we have given the explanation for it. All right. What conclusion is appropriate when H not cannot be rejected? The B question is asking us what conclusion is appropriate when H naught cannot be rejected. So the conclusion appropriate in this case scenario where we are accepting the null hypothesis is that the manager's statement that the mean weekend guest bill is 600 or less is correct. Okay, so this will be the conclusion for the H0 which cannot be rejected. Now what will be the conclusion if the H0 can be rejected? So the same, it is also simple. A member of the hotel's accounting staff, noticing that it is the mean weekend guest bill is greater than 600, so we will accept the alternative hypothesis. Not accept, but basically we will reject the alternative hypothesis, and we will certify that the member of accounting's hotel staff was true in his statement. Okay, so yeah, that's it. So in this scenario, for the last time I'm explaining this, we have two person. One is a manager and other one is a member, accounting member. Okay, accounting member staff. So here the manager gives claim, and here the accounting member staff gives an assumption. Okay, this is how we form two situations out of the case which is given to us. All right, now the last thing is how it will look like, the accepted hypothesis. This one, second one, how this will look like? This will look like this. We always test the alternate hypothesis. Okay, so the tail is pointing on the right direction, so it is our upper tail hypothesis. Yeah, all right, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so basically we have this thing which is called as type 1 and type 2 errors. All right, so we have a matrix wherein the top row says population condition and the column says conclusion. Okay, so we have two population conditions which are H0 and HA, null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, and the condition of them which are written, whether so both in both of the cases true conditions are written. Okay, null hypothesis true, alternative hypothesis also true. Here conclusion is written. Okay, this is a condition and this is the conclusion. Conclusion is what we conclude in the end of a particular problem. So whether to accept the H0 or to reject the H0, these are the two conclusions which we have given. Okay, so let us understand this, what it says. When you have a population condition where your H0 is true, so in conclusion you will accept the H0, so your conclusion will be correct. Okay, both of the things are right. So in this case you have H0 as true, so you are accepting it, H0 which is true, and you are concluding that you will accept this H0. Both statements are true. So that is why we are making that we are stating that our conclusion is correct in this case. If in the other case where we have our alternative hypothesis population condition as true, our HA is true, that means it is our duty to certify or to make the conclusion that we are not accepting HO, we are rejecting HO. But if a particular scenario wherein your HA is also true and you are accepting the HO, means you are accepting both, so in that case it results in type 2 error. Your HA is true, but you are concluding that you are accepting the null hypothesis. In such a case it results in type 2 error. Similarly, in this third case, where if your null hypothesis is true but you are also rejecting the null hypothesis, so this results in type 1 error. You are saying that your population condition null hypothesis H0 is true, but you are not accepting it, you are rejecting it, so this comes under type 1 error. Now we have the last condition wherein our HA is true and we are rejecting the H naught. Yes, so we have our HA as true and we are rejecting our H naught. So yeah, this will be also our correct conclusion. Okay, so let's read out the written statement over here. The first row of table shows what can happen if the conclusion is to accept HO. If HO is true, this conclusion is correct. However, if HA is true, we make a type 2 error. This, okay, that is, we accept HO when it is false. We accept HO if HA is false. Okay, so then it will not come under type 2 error. Why it is a type 2 error? Because we are stating that our HA is also true and we are accepting the null hypothesis. The second row of the table shows what can happen if conclusion is to reject HO. If HO is true, we make type 1 error. That is, we reject HO when it is true. However, if HA is true, rejecting HO is correct. Okay. So they are in the second statement, it is talking about the type 1 error situation, which I just explained. So yeah, we have another thing which is called as the level of significance. So in simple words, the level of significance is going to be our alpha, which we understood in the chapter 8. Not in the chapter 8 particularly, but in the chapter of interval estimation, where we have confidence interval given a particular range in the normal distribution diagram, and the remaining portion left over is what we have as alpha. Okay, so that alpha we will use when we will form some of the hypotheses. Okay, so yeah, the Greek symbol alpha is used to uh, denote the level of significance. In practice, the person conducting the hypothesis test specifies the level of significance. Anybody who is practicing the test will specify it. Okay, the researcher or the person who is studying or building some sort of hypothesis. By selecting that person is controlling the probability of making a type 1 error. So after selecting the particular alpha value, that person is controlling the probability of making a type 1 error, whether the type 1 error will be caused or not. So he is deciding that. How he is deciding? By selecting the alpha. Now, as in research, and if you want to go into the field of research, you must note these 2 points. The first one is, if the cost of making a type 1 error is high, small values are preferred. Okay, and if the cost of making a type 1 error is not too high, larger values of alpha are typically used. Okay, so common choices for alpha are 0.05 and 0.05% and 1%. Okay, applications of hypothesis testing that only control for the type 1 error are often called significance test. Most applications of hypothesis testing are of this type. Okay, so you must remember this point. The application of hypothesis testing that only control for the type 1 error, which only controls the type 1 error, are called significance test. Okay. Now, although most applications of hypothesis testing control for the probability of making a type 1 error, they do not always control for the probability of making a type 2 error. Okay. So in the most of the scenario, we have a probability of uh, hypothesis testing wherein it can control the probability of making type 1 error, but it is not possible or same in the cases of type 2 error. Hence, we decide to accept HO. We cannot determine how confident we can be with that decision. Because of the uncertainty associated with making a type 2 error, statisticians often recommend that we use the statement do not reject H naught. Okay. So whenever our null hypothesis concludes that it is correct, we must write in the conclusion that do not reject H naught. It is really important. Okay, so instead of except H naught. Okay. Using the statement do not reject H naught carries the recommendation to withhold both judgment and action. In effect, by not directly accepting H naught, the statistician avoids the risk of making a type 2 error. Whenever the probability of making a type 2 error has not been determined and controlled, we will not make the statement except H naught. In such cases, two conclusions possible are do not reject H naught or reject H naught. We cannot directly say except HA, okay? We will say either do not reject H naught or reject H naught. Anyways, moving on to the next slide. So yeah, these are some of the important keywords which we have. Throughout this video, we understood what is null hypothesis and what is alternative hypothesis. We also understood about the three types, the three symbolisms of hypothesis, which are less than equal to greater than equal to less than, and then we had is equal to and not equals to. Okay, so we also seen how it looks in the diagram. We always make the diagram with respect to our alternative hypothesis, where the point shows there becomes our portion. So here the point is on left, we are making on left side, and equals to not equals to is easy to understand, where we have to always remember that it means it is a two-tailed hypothesis. Okay, so yeah, this is it. This is upper tailed, this is lower tailed, and this is two-tailed. Right. Then we also understood about type 1 error and type 2 error, wherein type 2 error said that our HA is true, but at the same time we are accepting H naught. Okay, HA true and accept H naught. And type 1 error was wherein our HO is true, and but we are saying that we are concluding that accept HA. So this is our type 1 and type 2 error. We also talked about the level of significance alpha, wherein common values are 0.01 and 0.05, which we assume mostly for conducting our hypothesis test, 1% and 5%. Let's understand this problem. Small, easy, and basic problem. The label of container of yogurt claims that the yogurt contains an average of 1 gram fat or less. Answer the following question for hypothesis test that could be used to test the claim on the label. Alright, the first question is asking us to formulate the appropriate null and alternative hypothesis. Means HO and HA, or H naught and HA. So here an average of 1 gram, meaning that mu and 1. Mu and 1 we will write like this. Okay. So average of 1 gram, that means average means mu. Okay. So I recently said claims comes under null hypothesis. So the claim is that an average of 1 gram of fat or less. Yeah, so this is how the null hypothesis will become. An average of 1 gram or less. This is our average of 1 gram or less. So our null hypothesis is formed. Whenever our null hypothesis is formed, what we do? We opposite the symbols of null hypothesis, and this goes into our alternative hypothesis. So this is how our hypothesis will look. And most important is to show it in the normal distribution diagram. So herein the point of the symbol is pointing towards the right direction. So this will look like this, and we will say that this is our upper tailed hypothesis. Okay. Yeah, so our question A has been solved. Now let's solve the question B, which says, what is the type 1 error in this situation? What are the consequences of making this error? So type 1 error is basically we reject h naught when h naught is true. So in this case, our type 1 error will be like the yogurt, the label on the container of yogurt claiming that the yogurt contains an average of 1 gram of fat or less is true, but we are rejecting it. So this is type 1 error. We are stating that that is true, our null hypothesis is true, and at the same time we are rejecting it. This is the type 1 error. Okay, so the consequences is that we're claiming mu is greater than 1. At the same time we are saying that mu is lesser than equals to 1. This is our type 1 error. Okay, and this results in the cost. So both have the same consequences. It results in the cost. Okay, anyways, let's understand the C. What is the type 2 error in this situation? So type 2 error could be, we are saying that our mu is greater than 1 is true, but we conclude that it is not. That is type 2 error. Okay, so yeah, that is it. This is what we have. This is what is there in the problem, and it is very simple. In the coming videos I'll discuss in detail of how to build hypothesis, what are the steps involved in building a hypothesis, particular hypothesis, and how we arrive to certain conclusions. All right, see you in the next video. Bye bye.